Hi, I'm Cheryl and welcome to my sewing room. I'm going to demonstrate how to make a St. Patrick's Day welcome banner. So here it is. Okay, now I've got 2-inch squares stitched on at the top and the bottom of the banner. All of the letters are put on by using machine applique stitch, and you'll notice that the letter O is a little shamrock. Okay, all right, let me go over the cutting instructions or how much fabric you need to have. Now, the finished size of this is 18 by 27. The fabric that you'll need for this is for the banner body, you'll need 1/4 yard. For both the light and dark squares, you'll need 1/8 yard of each. For the back of the banner, 1/4 yard. You'll also need heavy iron-on interfacing, and I stress the word heavy, don't get thin interfacing. You'll need 1/4 yard. And 3/8 wide ribbon, 3/8 inch wide ribbon, 9 inches long. Also, 2-sided fusible web, and it comes in packages of sheets that are around 9 by 12 inches. And then you'll also need a wooden rod that you can purchase in a craft store, and some fabric stores also sell them. And they're 36 inch long rods, and you're going to cut it down, and I'll go over the size later in the video, but you will be cutting it to size. I wouldn't get one larger than 1/4 inch. Mine was slightly smaller than 1/4 inch. And down here it lists the size of the pieces that you need to cut, okay? All right. Now also, if you have questions on how to cut quilting fabric, watch the video Tips for Cutting Quilt Fabric, and that link is appearing right about now on your screen. I'm first going to go over the size and shapes of your letters. Okay, now this is different style letters. This is a block letter, and this is kind of a fancy letter. So how I did mine was I went into my word processor on the computer, selected a font style, and enlarged it to the very largest size possible that it would allow. And you'll notice that this one was select to a really large size, but look how big it came out. And then this one, I selected to the largest size, and this is actually was smaller than this. So I had to use my enlargement button on my printer to get it even larger. So test out the different fonts, or you can even freehand draw your own letters. So this is the one that I chose, just these block letters. Okay, now I'm going to go over the fusible webbing. All right, now fusible webbing has 2 sheets of paper. On the back it's plain, and on the other side it has grid lines. Now this particular one has yellow grid lines. Some of the others I've used have blue grid lines. Wherever the grid lines are is the side you either draw your own letters or you trace around letters that you printed out. Okay, now I want to draw your attention to one particular letter, and that is the letter L. Now I chose to use all capital letters, but when you go to do the applique process and drawing it onto your fusible web, you need to reverse the letter L. Very important. Otherwise, when you're done, it's going to come out backwards. If you're using lowercase letters, for instance, here's my capital E, it doesn't matter which way I turn it. You can turn it anyway and it's going to be fine. But if you use a lowercase e, you'll have to reverse it. So review all your letters and make sure it's something you don't have to reverse. So then, once you've got all your letters selected, then put it on the grid line side, and then go ahead, and draw around it like I did here, okay? Then you're going to cut it out. Now when you cut it out, you want to make sure you leave a little bit of fusible web extending past the drawn lines. Now here's my fabric for the back. Here's my fabric on the front that I'm going to use for the applique. This is the front. You're going to put it on the back. So before you can put it on the back, you need to flip it over and remove the plain paper on the back. Now make sure that the glue doesn't come off. All right, so right now this feels tacky. So remove this and then turn it over and put it on the back side. Then finger press it. Okay, finger press it really good. Now take small pair of scissors, because it cuts out a little easier, and cut on the drawn lines. Alrighty? Okay, and when you're done, it comes out like this. So even though you had to draw it in reverse, when you're done, it comes out correctly. So you can see why I had to do it that way. Okay, now you're going to do your shamrock. There again, you can either freehand draw a shamrock, and make sure you do it on the grid line side. Now I chose to cut it out of fabric. During January and February, of course, you're going to find a lot of St. Patrick's Day fabrics, and they've got shamrocks all over them. So I found this great fabric that had just exactly what I was looking for, and it had hundreds of these printed on it. I just cut it out. So when you're going to use it from fabric that's already drawn on, you're going to go to the back and remove the paper off the back. Then put your shamrock on it. And then I usually lay the paper down over it and finger press. Okay? Then with small scissors, cut out your shamrock. And this is how mine came out. See? All right? So there you go. Now that you've got all of your shamrock made and all of your letters, just set it aside. Okay, now I'm going to show you how to piece all of your fabrics together. So you're going to take and place your squares like this. Start out with a dark square, then a light, then a dark, and then a light. Okay, and then repeat it, but now your second row will be light, dark, light, and dark. Okay, that's how they're going to be stitched together, but you're going to stitch one row at a time. So bring right sides together and stitch 1/4 inch seam. Then just continue on down. Whoops, let me get this apart. And bring the other one on top and stitch 1/4 inch and continue down the row. Then take the next row and do it. You're going to make 4 rows all together, because you need 2 of these at the top and 2 at the bottom. Okay? Now, after they're stitched together, they're going to look like this. Okay. But you need to press your seams. So at your ironing board, press the seams on the back side first. And there's 3 of them. So you're going to press all of the seams on the back first. Then flip it over to the front, and you're going to press the seams on the front. Now I would keep this lifted a little bit, and with your iron, push against that seam all the way down. And when you're done, you'll notice all the seams went in one direction. Now when you're doing the second row, you want to make sure, let me get this turned over, that the seams on each row are going in a different direction. So this one here is going this way, and that's going that way. Okay, so now I'm going to flip them back over. Now that all the pressing is done, bring right sides together and line up your seams. Get them really close together. Make sure that the seam on the bottom is going in a different direction than the seam on top. And I always place pins to hold my seams together. So pin all of your seams, making sure they're real close together and everything's going in the right direction. Then stitch 1/4 inch. Then at your ironing board, press on the back side, then unfold and press on the top side. Okay? When you're done, you'll see I've got all the seams going in the same direction there. Now, remember how I said to make 4 rows? On your second set, you're adding 2 more squares at the bottom. So first stitch these 2 together here, 1/4 inch, then attach it to the bottom and make sure that the seam on the bottom is going in a different direction than the one on top. Stitch a 1/4 inch, press on the back, open it up and press. Okay? So you can see everything is going in the correct direction. Now, you need to do a little bit of cutting on this bottom section here. So, take the 1/4 inch line on your ruler and you're going to line it up here, right here where these 2 squares meet, right there. And then over here where these 2 meet, right there. Now, lay the 1/4 inch line down on those 2 sections. Don't worry about the middle one. Just those 2. Once you've got your lined up, now take your time and then with your rotary cutter, trim the excess off. Okay? And then go over to the other side, line it up again, 1/4 inch here and over here. Line up that 1/4 inch line. Again, take your time and then trim it off. Okay? Alrighty, so when you're done with that one, it's going to look like this. See? Now take the body of your fabric, that one big long piece that you had to cut, and you're going to take your squares and put it on each end of the banner body. Okay? You're going to bring the raw edges together, bring right sides together. Fronts of the fabrics are facing each other. Pin it down. Then stitch 1/4 inch along that entire edge. Do it on the other end also. Then press, unfold, and press again. Now, the seams should be going towards the square. So this seam should go in towards the squares. Same thing on the other side. It's going in towards the squares. Okay. Alrighty, now take the fabric for the back of your banner and lay it down. Now, if you've got print on the back, you're going to have the wrong side, the print side facing down. Put your interfacing on top of that. Now, your interfacing has got glue on one side, so that's usually the shiny side. You want that facing up. Then take your banner, center it over the fabrics, because you haven't really cut it to size yet. So that's what we're going to do. So lay it down, and you're going to take your ruler and place the edge of the ruler along the edge of the banner. Line it up nice and straight so everything looks good, and begin trimming the excess backing fabric and interfacing off. Go around all of your edges, trimming it off. Okay? Once it is trimmed off on all of the edges, remove the fabric for the back and set it aside. Now take your banner, lay it face down with your, excuse me, I got the wrong piece here. Sorry about that. Line up your edges, okay, and pin, excuse me, you don't need to pin, just line them up. Now you're at your ironing board. This is important. Don't do this step on your cutting mat because it will melt your mat. Read the instructions on the package of interfacing, heavy interfacing, and it's probably going to tell you to put a damp cloth, and then it's going to tell you to hold your iron down. Now this iron is not hot, remember, do it at your ironing board. It's going to tell you to hold your iron down and hold it probably anywhere from 8, 10, or 12 seconds. And you just keep moving it, holding it that long in each place. And this permanently adheres the interfacing to the back of your banner. Now you're going to flip your banner over to the front. All right, and now we're going to work on putting on the appliques. Now the interfacing, what's neat about it, not only does it keep the banner nice and stiff, but it also acts as a stabilizer for the machine applique. So you got a twofer in there. Take your letters and just lay them down. Make sure you got everything spelled correctly as you're laying them down, because you're going to be putting them permanently on. Remember, the Shamrock is the letter O. All right, and you're just laying them in order. Don't worry about them being centered just yet. You're just laying them in order. Like I said, make sure you got it spelled correctly. Okay, so now we're going to center all the letters and put them on there really nice. Now my letters are about 1.5 inches high. So the spacing of your letters might be a little different because of the size that you may have selected. So be aware that you may have to change your measurements. This is why you just sort of lay it out and get it in the places that you think it's going to work best. Mine, I'm going to put my 1¼ inch line on my ruler right on this line where the body fabric and the squares meet. I'm going to put the 1¼ inch line there. And my ruler's edge here that's starting with 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. The center is 4¼ because remember, this banner is 8.5 inches wide. So 4¼ is my center mark. Take your first letter, the letter W. You're going to remove the paper off the back and then place it here. Now, don't finger press it just yet. Just kind of tap it there because you don't want it to shift. Now you're going to continue on down and placing the rest of them. So place the 1/2 inch line on the ruler right there at the edge, bottom edge of the W, and then place the E underneath there. Now center it as best you can, making sure the letters are nice and straight. Then you're just going to keep going on down the banner, doing this with all of the letters so that they're evenly spaced and they're centered. Just keep going on down. Remember, remove the paper and tap them down. Then kind of stand back for a second. Make sure everything looks straight, everything looks centered, and you like the way it looks. Then finger press it. All of them. Finger press it all the way down. Then at your ironing board, you're going to permanently fuse it on. So place your damp cloth on top. And then take your iron. Again, read the instructions on the package for how long you need to hold the iron down. Hold it for that number of seconds and lift and do the same thing and go all the way down till you've got all of the letters fused on. Okay, now that you've got them fused on, I want you to look in your bag of presser feet to see if you have an open toe presser foot. Look at this. You can see where the needle is. Nothing is in your way. And that's why I advise you to use one of these to do your applique stitches. You can still do it with a regular presser foot, but it's hard to see where you're stitching. So look to see if you have one. If you don't, you can purchase them on the internet. They're very inexpensive. This one, it might have cost me $10, if that much. So, and also you can check your local sewing machine store. So when you're doing your applique stitches, you're just lining up that center mark on the edge of your letters and you're stitching along. Now let's look at the applique stitches I did on this one here. I chose a small satin stitch because these are relatively small letters. It's not a great big giant thing we're appliquing on. So when you're appliquing small things, then select a smaller stitch. Don't use the great big ones. Now, if you don't have any applique stitches on your machine, you can use a zigzag stitch, okay, around all of the edges. All right, now that you've got all of your applique letters on, take the fabric for the back and lay it down and line up all of your edges. Okay, so line it all up, then place pins around all of the edges to hold it together. Now I'm going to go to a little diagram here for the next part. As you're pinning, I want you to be aware that you need to leave an opening at the top, large enough for your hand to go through. So your start and stop place needs to be anywhere from 1 inch to 1.5 inches away from the outer edge here. And you're going to stitch a 1/4 inch seam. Now, one of the little tip is I like to give is where I'm going to stop, I like to put 2 pins so that when I get around that corner, I don't forget to stop stitching, because I have been known to just go right over my opening and then I have to pull it all out. So start over here, and so stitch along here 1/4 inch from the raw edge. When you get 1/4 inch from here, stop, leave your needle down, lift up your presser foot, turn your banner and begin stitching down the next side. Okay? Always at the corners do that because you won't lose your place. Now as you stitched around, you're coming around to your last corner. Remember to come here and stop. And always do a few stitches back and forth where the stopping point is, and don't forget to do that at the starting point. Okay, now I want you to look at the bottom down here, and you'll see that you need to trim your corners. But you want to leave at least 1/8 inch of fabric between the stitch line and where you trim. So I've trimmed a little bit off here first, then come out to this edge and kind of go in at an angle, and then over here and do the same thing. Remember, leave about 1/8 inch and do it at all 5 corners, even these little funky ones right there, okay? Then you're going to reach inside the opening and turn this right side out. After you've got it turned right side out, you're going to reach in the opening again with something pointed, and you're going to start poking all of the corners out. Now be gentle when you're poking, because you don't want to poke a hole in your fabric, and this will help to flatten the corners a little bit. Okay, let me switch to my finished one here to show you the ending steps that you need to do. All right, now at your opening, you need to take your 36-inch rod and lay it down here up at the top, and you're going to cut it 1/2 inch shorter than the width of the banner, okay? And then just what I did was I just put a little mark on it, took it to my husband and have him cut it for me. He just took a sharp knife. Now don't take a steak knife, don't take your good knife. And he said it was pretty easy to cut. Okay, so you don't need to get out an electric saw to do this, alrighty? Okay, then just push it inside, go in between the back and front layers of the banner. It's now inside, and just lay it there like that. Now at your opening, you're going to place ribbon inside of the 2 layers at the at each end of the opening. I think I got that out right. Each end. Fold these edges in inside the banner 1/4 inch. Place pins all along here, okay, to hold it all together. Then you're going to place pins around all of the edges to flatten them, and you want to make sure your edges look nice and even. Okay, I don't know how well Mr. Cameraman can see this, okay? So you want to make sure it's nice and even. You want to flatten all of these edges. Then you're going to go back to the sewing machine, start up in one of the corners, any of the corners, and stitch real close to the edge. Now, don't go any farther than 1/8 inch from the edge. Try to make it slightly narrower than 1/8 inch, and go around all 5 edges. One more little thing and then you're almost done. Take your rod and turn it a little bit. It's just push on it in there. It'll come up pretty easily. And begin pushing it up to the top. All right, it'll come up pretty easily. Now take at your sewing machine, put on your zipper foot. Now your zipper foot may look a little different than mine, okay? So whatever your zipper foot is, put that on your machine. And then up here at the top, you're going to push that zipper foot against that wooden rod and begin to stitch all the way across. Okay? And when you're done, you've got this rod encased up here so it will not fall or slip while being used. And now you are done. Isn't this pretty? I thought it was really cute. It really turned out really, really nice. All right? Now, I hope you try to make this project. I think you'll have a really good time. It's a lot of fun making these little crafty items. Now, to keep informed on all my future videos, click on one of my subscribe buttons. There's one down there in the lower left-hand corner and one up there in the upper left-hand corner. It's a round picture of my face. Click on any one of those. YouTube will ask you for your email address. Enter that information. And the next time I have a new video, YouTube will send you a brief email with a big button in the center. You click on it and it takes you directly to my latest video. I'm Cheryl and I'm really glad you came to my sewing room. I'll see you next time and happy sewing.